All right, this is Mr. Barr. Thanks for listening to this lecture. I wanted to walk you through some of the basic information I want to use in current events for the death penalty. Now, I don't usually like to lecture in this class, but I think sometimes it's necessary to make sure everybody is working off the same bit of information. All right? So just follow along in your notes packet, and we'll talk through these notes. The earliest death penalty in the English colonies was handed out in 1608 for treason. So you go all the way back to Jamestown in 1608. That's the first time we really have a record of the death penalty being used, and it was used for treason. That was the most common reason, by the way, in the colonies or the early United States was for treason. By 1775, the death penalty was used in all 13 colonies during the Revolution, and this wasn't anything new to us. I mean, Britain had it. The other countries in Europe used it frequently. It wasn't like it was just us. We didn't get the idea from out of nowhere. We got it from somebody. We stole most of our ideas from somebody, and this is one of those indeed. In 1787, the U.S. Constitution was ratified, and it allowed the death penalty. And in 1790, the first person was executed in the United States under the death penalty. So under the formal United States of America, after the Constitution, we had the first person executed in 1790. The death penalty has kind of a complicated history in the United States. There's been moments where it's been popular and moments where it hasn't. Let's take a look at 1972. In 1972, the U.S. Supreme Court declared that the death penalty was a violation of the Eighth Amendment protection against cruel and unusual punishment in a bunch of different court cases we'll look at in this class, and they overturned 600 death sentences. In 1976, a different U.S. Supreme Court, because you had a lot of turnover in that 4-year window, you had a different president, a lot of different things. The U.S. Supreme Court overruled the 1972 case. This case was called Furman v. Georgia and declared the death penalty to be legal. Today, the United States and 111 countries have outlawed not the United States, excuse me. Today, 111 countries have outlawed the death penalty completely. So there's a lot of countries that are going away from it now. And I think the reason why we'll get to in a little bit, but the death penalty, you got to understand, is very permanent. You can't go backwards. Life in prison, yeah, it sucks because they've spent their life in prison and they've lost those years, but at least they're still around. The death penalty, you take someone's life, you can't undo that. So I think that pressure is really what changes how we feel about it. In the United States, 32 states allow the death penalty, 18 do not. Iowa does not. Texas executes the most. It's about one per month. They reached their 500th execution in 2013. Last year they were 4 out of 12 executions were in Texas. They've executed 563 since 1976. So the way we look at death penalty history is pre-1976 when it was illegal, and then post-1976. So a lot of the statistics that you'll read about or hear about in this class are after 1976, and that's why, because that's when the Supreme Court decided that the death penalty was legal again. Texas executes the most. They've executed 563 since 1976. So that's quite a few. The most in the country. Why Texas? Good question. It probably has to do with their very conservative political philosophy, but also I think it's just one of those, it's a big state that has a long history, and I think it's just a piece of their history they don't want to let go of. The states that tend to be more conservative or Republican tend to be more supportive of the death penalty. The states that tend to be more liberal or Democratic-leaning states tend to be less supportive of the death penalty. And that's a very big generalization. I hate doing that, but that's the simplest way I can explain it. I want to take a look at cost with you very quickly because there's a lot of misnomers out there about what the death penalty actually cost. And I think if we can clear up those misnomers, it might help you shape your opinion on what you think. In the state of California, for example, this is just at the state level, it's estimated that the death penalty has cost the state $4 billion since 1978. It's about $1.94 billion in pretrial costs, $925 million in automatic appeals and habeas corpus petitions, $775 million in federal appeals, and $1.1 billion in incarceration costs. The cost to try a death penalty case at the federal level is over $1.26 million per case. That's 8 times what it would cost to try a murder with no death penalty involved. So people often think that it's actually cheap. It's more expensive to leave someone in prison for the rest of their life. It isn't. Okay, it's actually more expensive to do the death penalty, and the biggest reason why is because of the automatic appeals that happen. Okay, so some questions we often ask: why is the cost worth it? Does the cost outweigh the benefits? Can these states use that money for something else? I think they probably could. Like every other topic in here, we look at major pros and major cons. Let's look at the pros first. The first common pro, these are common ones. These aren't the only ones, but these are the ones that everybody uses, is that it acts as a deterrent to major crimes. A deterrent means that it's likely to deter. People are less likely to commit a crime if they know the death penalty could be a possibility. I think that's probably true at a level. I think having the death penalty out there does definitely do that. That's one of the common reasons why we should do it, that the fear of the sentence can make people think twice before they commit a crime. The second common pro is that it provides closure to victims' families. Families of victims are often able to witness the execution. For some, this provides closure. There's no risk of them getting out and crime reoccurring. It's over. It's done. It ends the risk of crime reoccurring because they're dead. There's no possibility. The criminal's killed. They can't commit a crime. The fourth one is that it's only used in the most extreme cases. So advocates for the death penalty would argue it's not like we're executing common everyday criminals. This sentence is reserved for the hardest, most hardened criminals in our society, and it's fine to use it for that. We don't want to use it for everybody, but it's fine to use it for that. All right, let's take a look at the cons. Common cons, the opposite. The death penalty does not deter crime. Numerous studies show that, in fact, criminals that commit capital crimes, crimes that are punishable by death, don't care about the punishment. They're not interested. They don't think about it. Okay? It depends on what side of the coin you think and which. This data is a lot like everything else. You're going to see both sides of the coin on everything. The question is, which one do you believe? How did they get their sources? Which one's credible? That's the kind of stuff I want you to pay attention to. Number two, another reason not to do it. Again, pros are reasons we should have it. Cons are reasons we shouldn't. Punishes murder with another murder. In the view of some, killing a criminal who committed murder makes us no better than the criminal. Okay. And the third one is that it's cruel and unusual punishment which devalues human life. The process can be inhumane. Executions are sometimes botched. It's not a pleasant experience. We'll take a peek at it a little bit as we go forward. And the fourth one is that criminals have been proven to be innocent after their executions. The system is flawed. The death penalty cannot be taken back. So we have to make sure that we are 1,000% right before we execute somebody. Many argue that the system of the death penalty is fundamentally flawed, that it's full of systemic issues and problems, and because of that, until we can fix those, we should just get rid of the death penalty altogether and figure something else out. An important question to ask, though, is how do we know that the people on death row are actually guilty of a crime? What if they're not? What if they didn't do it? What if new evidence would exonerate them? Do we want to take that chance when we're talking about somebody's life? I don't know the answer to that, but that's something that I think society needs to look at. This is fueled by media reports that constantly bring out stories of people who were innocent. You see it all the time. CNN did a whole special of like death row inmates that were found innocent. Some of the problem is the media, it's not as many as we think it is. The media just glorifies those, but is one too many? One is too many. If you're on death row and you've been accused and we're going to take your life, one is too many. One mistake is too many. 99% of the time, the person is guilty. That's in the New York Times from 2009. They did a study, and they found that 99% of the time, the person was guilty. Here's my question. Is 99% enough? Should we be absolutely sure? And how do we make sure that we are absolutely sure? I think those are important questions. Between 1976 and 2009, over 130 people on death row were found to be innocent by DNA evidence. So they were on death row, sentenced to be executed, sentenced to die, and they were found to be innocent. A big thing happened in Illinois. Has been kind of the big leading state on reforming the death penalty. Governor George Ryan, a Republican, let 167 inmates be released from death row because he could not trust the system in his state. These cases have brought the call for a nationwide ban and systemic reform. Make sure you fill out your notes packet. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.